Good evening. I'm Mike Kortz, one of the new members of the council. Linda and I together have the benefit of coming on the council this year and do not share all of the experience and history with some of this that the rest of the council does, and so we're somewhat dependent on their level of expertise. But first, let me thank you all for coming tonight. You could be watching a great Monday night football game. Thank goodness we didn't do this next week or nobody would be here. Or you could come out here. And I know there are varying positions in this room and different opinions, and some of them we are polar opposites on this issue, and that's fair. But what's important is that you're here, and I thank you for that regardless of whatever your position is, because you've taken the time out of your evening to come here and participate in this, and that's important. When we stop doing that, it doesn't matter, you know, what we want to do. We're just too apathetic to go on. You know, I joined the council this January, fairly naive about the workings of city government, and it's been a very vertical learning curve. My wife and I became residents of DuPont 4 years ago next week, where we built our retirement home, and we're here because, well, 20 years ago, my sister moved to this fair city and was one of the early residents of Northwest Landing. In 2001, my parents moved to this city, and I'd always thought I'd retire in Lakewood. They don't have sidewalks. They don't have a lot of things, actually. And as I watched through my military career, coming back here for leaves and visiting my family, I saw this magnificent town springing up from a place that I knew in high school as sort of a little backwater place that, you know, wasn't quite sure what happened in DuPont, to becoming, you know, what we call it as Pleasantville. And I watched this thing grow. I watched it get built. And Robbie and I said, you know, this is a place we want to be. And we feel very blessed and fortunate to have been able to establish our roots here and don't plan to leave. So as I embarked on this task, and as I've beaten up the mayor about this, I said, first thing that happens is you throw a settlement agreement in our lap in the first 2 weeks in, and then you drop this bill in our lap. Thanks. How about some nice, easy Mayberry RFD tasks to work in? You know, let's plan a party or something. Too easy. Yeah, too easy. But it is what it is. And so I wanted to inform myself. I volunteered to serve on his finance committee, and that was a fascinating experience. There again, you have a group of citizens, some of them whom I absolutely disagree with. But the reality is they spent a lot of time here, and they informed themselves. And there is a lot of information out there, and we're living proof that the same set of information, honest people of good intent can come to different conclusions about. And that's fair, and that's the challenge that we all will face this November when we each privately make a decision about what course of action we want to pursue. As your council member, as we followed the financial committee meeting, we followed the town hall meeting, and all of those were very valuable processes. We informed each other. The council was informed. We got to peel some skin back on the onion. We went down some rabbit trails. We came out other trails. But we looked at this thing. We held it up. We chewed on it. We looked at it. We bounced it off the wall. And now we're here. I supported the levy in my vote. And I did that for several reasons. First of all, I hate taxes. I'm absolutely not convinced the government has a better idea how to spend my money than I do. But what I hate worse than taxes is the idea of the city of DuPont becoming an unincorporated housing development, or a place with beautiful homes and abandoned parks and inadequate public safety. And that's my concern. That's what I see as I look down. As we looked at the options, how do you raise revenues? I think John very eloquently covered, better than I could, a revenue imbalance, and I won't go back over that. But as we discussed it, I came to an understanding of why a property tax is more stable than other forms of revenue. We fix a dollar amount, and then the actual tax on all the property here fluctuates to meet the dollar amount. So the city establishes what it needs, and that tax rate will adjust accordingly, unlike other forms of tax, which are very volatile. And I agree with John that we're not Fife, We're not renting. You know, it'd be nice if Boeing built a few airplanes here and we could just pick up the scraps from that. We're not Puyallup. We are, in many ways, a bedroom community. And we have some assets here, some more office-type assets than manufacturing assets. So the huge sales, those types of revenue, those aren't ours. That's not here. But we have some valuable property. We currently have the lowest property tax rate in Pierce County, the absolute lowest. Yet we have a beautiful city. We have adequate services. I think we've cut too far, but I understand how we got there. And so as I looked at our tax rate, I looked at the median tax rate, and I looked at our level of services. I said, well, one of two things has happened. Either we are absolutely the smartest people in Pierce County, or there's something we don't know, or something we're not accounting for. And what the reality is, we did live off that bow wave of development funds for the last dozen years. There was a lot of money plowed back into the city that well has dried up. You know, by and large, the majority of our leased residential development is done. So that source of revenue is no longer there. So then the question we have to ask ourselves, if this is the level of services we as a community want, then how are we going to generate that revenue? What do we have at our disposal? And there was a lot of discussion, sell off city assets. I don't support that because that's a one-time shot. First, the assets we have that reasonably could be sold are not likely to generate sufficient revenue to make this year's payment, much less sustain that in the out years. So what do you do next year? We'll come back and revisit this again. We just don't have the assets to sell. The business taxes, and there is an ongoing discussion about the business and occupation tax. And there was a time when I favored that, but as we looked at it, one, it does not generate a huge source of revenue. And we are a small minority in the state of Washington of cities that have a B&O tax. What we have is undeveloped land, and we are competing for businesses now. In attending one of the meetings the mayor held, one of the business developers in the area talked about the 90 acres west of Intel. And what can we do here? We generate revenue with warehouses, partially because of the arsenic issue that we have, partially because of our advantageous location in proximity to I-5, and then where we're located, we're attractive for that kind of property. We're competing with Renton, when you say Renton, Auburn, and Fife for that kind of business, but they don't have a B&O tax. So the $25 million warehouse that we get built here generates $66,000 a year in property tax and a small percentage in B&O tax. But if we chase it away with B&O tax, then we don't have any revenues. So I didn't favor that. I would like to encourage business to come here, and they pay a property tax. Those businesses that call DuPont home, that actually, you know, are headquartered here, they pay the same percentage that the rest of us do. In fact, some of their property is not exempt like some of our property is. I'm satisfied that that was a fair share equitable burden. The 97.5 cents, in my mind, was the absolute minimum. Now, Councilman Westman has said he supported a property tax, but not at that rate because of the onerous burden. Am I correct, Roger? Correct. Doing my thumbnail math, you talked about a 75 cent as acceptable. We passed 0.975. For the average home in DuPont that's assessed at $320,000, the difference is $6 a month between those figures. The 97.5 cents is an additional $26 a month. The 75 cents would have been $20 a month. So that's the difference. That $6 difference is the onerous burden. I don't consider that an onerous burden. What I consider an onerous burden is getting driven to the hospital or getting my house burnt down or whatever the results will be, or not having parks anymore. I view this levy, if we're successful, as a stake in the ground. It's a stake in the ground that prevents any further erosion of our current services and capacity and stabilizes the city's financial position. We're not where we should be yet. I'd like to see us with ambulance service. I think we need more people in some of our city staff departments, but this isn't the time. The economic condition doesn't support that. But I think if we can stabilize the situation now, if we can posture ourselves to encourage businesses to come, then our ability to generate revenues and service the citizens of this city the way we'd like to, whether it's emergency services, whether it's another planner so we can actually turn a building permit in faster than 6 weeks. Those are all things I think we ought to be doing. But, you know, this is the fire we have to put out. This is the emergency. And I weighed all those things and thought that was the best course of action to follow. Thank you.